Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Shadow game streaming service. This is a little different than GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming that we've looked at in prior videos, because this is something where you get an actual Windows 10 PC running in the cloud, and you can pretty much install whatever you want on it, including things that are not games. And we're going to look at the gaming applications here, but also some of the non-gaming things you can do with one of these cloud servers as well. Now, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I am paying for the Shadow service here with my own funds. I've actually gotten a lot more utility out of it than I thought. All of the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor is anyone reviewing or approving what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this Shadow service is all about. Now, the tier that I am subscribed to is their entry-level tier called Shadow Boost. There will be some other tiers with beefier specifications that will be available for more money, but right now this is all that's available in my region. You get a GeForce GTX 1080 equivalent in your cloud server, a 3.5 gigahertz 4-core 8-thread CPU, 12 gigs of RAM, and 256 gigabytes of storage on that server. And I'll talk more about the storage here in a minute. Now, this costs $14.99 a month if you go on a month-to-month plan. If you subscribe for a year, it is $11.99 a month. Now, what's interesting is that they don't bill you the whole year up front. They bill you month to month, but if you cancel early, I think there's a penalty involved with it. And the other thing to note with this is that there is a waiting list for service. So if you subscribe today, you might have to wait a month or two before you get your account. And this has been going on with Shadow for some time now, just given they have a lot of infrastructure that they have to bring in to support all of the customers that keep signing up for the service. So once you get into that subscription, it might be a while before you actually get access to it. And the important thing to note here is that they will bill your first month up front. So you might pay your $12 or $14 and then have to wait 2 months before you can actually get into the service. It's kind of like a deposit. Now, if it takes longer than a month, they're not going to bill you again. But just know, when you hit that subscribe button, even if you can't get onto the service today, they're going to bill you right away. So just be aware of that. That was something that I hadn't read the fine print on when I first signed up. But you do have to subscribe in order to get in line, and there are no free trials just yet. You can upgrade the storage. They do have some options available for that. And then there will be a Ultimate and Infinite tier that give you, again, some beefier specifications. The Ultimate tier will have a 2080 equivalent GPU. I think it's got some more storage available to you as well. That's going to be $24.99 a month. And then for $39.99 a month, you get their Infinite plan with a Titan RTX equivalent GPU. So if you want more horsepower, you'll be able to get it eventually, but right now the Boost tier seems to be all that's available where I am. Now, like most game streaming services, you do need a pretty decent connection to the internet. Shadow recommends a minimum of 15 megabits per second, but I found you'll want more than that to get the best results out of it. We're going to be running it today at 50 megabits per second downstream, and you can adjust it in the system settings to find out what works best for you. Now, it's available on a number of different platforms. We're running it today on Windows with a pretty low-spec PC. This is a Pepper Jobs mini PC that, in full disclosure, came in free of charge from the company a little while back. We do have it connected to the internet via Ethernet. So you'll want to try to wire it in if you can, but if not, you definitely want AC Wi-Fi with a pretty decent signal to get the best results if you're going wireless. Now, this will work with Windows, Mac OS, Ubuntu, Android and Android TV, along with iOS and tvOS devices. I was also able to get it to work on a Chromebook here using their Android app. So there's a good amount of compatibility here, but they don't have one of those WebRTC things that runs in a browser like GeForce Now has. But you do get very good latency, a very low latency, I should say, connecting back to the server. So here in Connecticut, my connection to their data center has been under 15 milliseconds most of the time, and you can pull up this little control panel here whenever you need to make adjustments to your bit rate and everything else that you're doing there. So generally it's been pretty good. I'm running at H.264 right now, but they do have an H.265 option. If you have a very low bandwidth connection, you might be able to squeeze a little bit more quality out of it. and overall it's been a pretty seamless experience both on the PC and the Mac and a few of the other platforms that I tried. I also ran this on my M1 equipped Mac. Even though the client right now is Intel only, it runs great on that Mac too. So overall things have been very good. Now what's neat about the service is that it is platform agnostic. So you can jump into your Epic Games account, you can load up your Steam account. Any game that you've purchased somewhere is going to be available to you on your server, provided you have enough storage. Now you do have to download the games from the platforms that you're on to your server in order for them to work. So I do have the Epic Games Store here. I did install Samurai Showdown here. If I wanted to add any of these other games in my library, I'll have to download them to my server. And of course, you have a limited amount of space to deal with here. So I found that I'm constantly having to go in and remove things to make room for other stuff. But the good news is everything I have tried has worked on this, including Gamepass and the Epic Store and Steam, and anything else out there should work as well, because this is just a Windows 10 PC that's running in the cloud. And I'll give you an example of a game that doesn't work on any of the other cloud services that I'm aware of at the moment. So BioShock Remastered here was one of the 2K games that got pulled off of GeForce Now because of licensing issues. Here, because you're using it on your virtual PC, it's available to you along with everything else in your Steam library, and it just boots right up. Let's take a look and see how this game runs, and then we'll try out a few other things. Now, of course, this is an older game, so it should run pretty nicely on here. You can see what settings that I have enabled on it, and we'll just jump out and kind of run through real quick. I am not seeing any artifacts or any kind of compression issues with it. You might see a little bit on screen because of the capture hardware that I had to use to interface with this computer, but it really looks and plays pretty much as nicely as it does on my regular computer when I am playing this locally. It just looks great. And again, I was really impressed with the low latency of this service. It's certainly going to add a little bit more latency than if you were directly connected, but it's very hard to notice. And that's one thing that I've liked quite a bit about Shadow so far, is that they really did appear to put some attention on the latency that we often see with these streaming services. And you really notice the low latency when you're just browsing around the Windows interface. Clicks are really immediate, and overall it just feels almost as good as it being local. But again, I am on Ethernet, and we're running at a pretty high bit rate from the server. So I think if you're on Wi-Fi, you might notice some things not playing as well. But it was great to be able to get access to my entire Steam library here, not just what the companies wanted me to run. So you do have some freedom here to run whatever you want to run. Let me boot up No Man's Sky here, and then we'll take a look at a Game Pass game. So here we are in No Man's Sky, a really beautiful game. We're at 1080p at high settings and getting about 60 frames per second here. It does dip down every once in a while, and we get a couple of little lag hits every now and then when it's loading in graphics, but generally it's about on par with what I experienced at these settings with a 1080 equipped gaming PC locally. So overall, great gaming performance here, and again, you've got your choice of platforms as to which games you want to play. Let's take a look now at a game running on Game Pass to see if we can get that to boot up. Now, in order to get Game Pass to work on Shadow, you do need to do some repartitioning of your storage allocation, and I'll put a link to some guides down below in the video description to show you how to do that. Basically, I had to take about 98 gigs or so and just allocate it to a D partition for Game Pass to work properly. The good news, though, is that I can install games from the other platforms on this D partition as well. So I wasn't really penalized, but it was one thing that I had to do. So let's boot up Ori here, which is one of the newer Game Pass titles, and let's see how it runs. All right, so here we've got Ori running at high settings, 1080p, and as you can see, we are north of 100 frames per second here with this game as well. And this is a Game Pass game, one that was in my Game Pass library. It synced up my save game with what I was doing on my PC, and all is good here. So it's running just like it would on a desktop PC, but it's running in a data center. And on the 3D Mark TimeSpy Benchmark test, we got a score of 5,872. Graphically, that's pretty much right in line with what we've seen with GTX 1080 equipped gaming PCs. The CPU performance is a little lower than I would like, but by and large, it'll be a good mid-range gaming experience on here. You might have to adjust your settings down a bit depending on the game, but at 1080p, most AAA titles should be very playable, and many of them will exceed 60 frames per second. And if you have this hooked up to a high frame rate display, you should have a pretty good experience. And you'll also have a great experience on a cheap little mini PC like this one. Now, I ran the Shadow client across all of the different devices that they support. I would say the most challenging devices to navigate were mobile phones, because if you have to jump out to Windows to load up something, it's really tricky to navigate the interface with your fingers on a tiny screen. All of the platforms I tested allow you to connect up a keyboard and mouse, though, so if you do have those things available, that might make it a little bit easier. Now, on Android devices, including their mobile phones and the NVIDIA Shield TV that I'm operating here, they do have a launcher that will allow you to jump into the games you have installed on your Shadow server directly. But you have to make sure that you've got your accounts already logged in for Steam or Epic or whatever else you're trying to run. If you don't, the game won't load, and then you have to go navigate the interface and pull up a keyboard and try to get all of that stuff working. So that's the one area where I think this gets a little trickier when you're on a mobile phone in particular, but also perhaps on a TV, which is why I would say get one of these keyboard trackpad combos, especially on the TV side, and keep it by your couch so that you can navigate the interface when you need to be able to pull up the games you want to play. Otherwise, you're using game controllers and having to hit buttons and doing on-screen keyboards. It can get really, really cumbersome. But I will say it's pretty cool to operate a Windows desktop with an NVIDIA Shield while you're sitting on your couch with a keyboard and trackpad. So there are some good things about this, but it is a desktop computer at heart, and you'll want to have a good way to interface with that, and just be prepared for a little bit of clunkiness on the mobile side. And as an addendum, Apple doesn't allow that launcher you saw on Android to run on their devices. So if you have an Apple TV, an iPhone, or an iPad, you have to navigate the Windows interface. There's no way to directly launch anything because it's against the Apple App Store rules. So just be prepared for that, and you may want to have a keyboard and mouse handy, especially on the iPad or Apple TV. Now, because this is just a Windows 10 computer in a cloud server, you can pretty much run whatever you want on it. So as you can see here, you can load up Microsoft Office if you have a license and do your Word documents. You can put web browsers on here. You could play solitaire if you want. Whatever you want to do here, you can install and run. I've got Firefox running here, and we'll do a quick speed test. Now remember, this is located on the server in the data center, and their data centers are likely in the same building or very close to some of the major CDNs that are out there. So these are the kind of ping rates you get out of this thing, usually like a millisecond or less. To most of the major providers. You get about a gigabit downstream to your Shadow server. The upload speeds are not as quick. It goes at about 105 megabits per second or so, but that's more than enough for multiplayer games, of course, and certainly enough to maybe even do a little video streaming. Let me show you how to do that in a second. Now, one other neat thing about Shadow is that you can connect your USB devices to the server. So right now, connected to my local PC here, I've got an external SSD and a webcam. And you can see that in the settings here, we have those two devices forwarded. And if I go over to my File Explorer here, you can see that the Extreme Solid State drive is here. It's available, and I can copy a file to it. And what's going to happen here is it's going to push that file over the internet back to my hard drive located here, hooked up to my little mini PC. Now, of course, the speeds won't be as fast as what this drive would be if it was local, but it's kind of neat that you can connect your USB devices to a remote computer and use them. Just know, though, that it uses a lot of bandwidth, and I found that when we were connecting up the webcam earlier, it was consuming about 50 megabits to get the data out of this webcam up to the server. So probably the usefulness of this would be memory sticks and things where you want to move files back and forth. Webcams will probably be a little bit tougher if you don't have a lot of upstream bandwidth. But one thing that I've been playing around with on the Shadow server has been Vmix, which is the video software that I use to produce and stream video here on the channel. It loads up and runs great here. And I'm going to do a quick little demo because one of the neat things about Vmix is that they have a Skype-like system where people can call into you with just a web browser. And it doesn't consume that much bandwidth, but it looks great. So typically a good call would be about 2 megabits per second. And what's nice about running this on the Shadow server is that the connection is much more reliable here than it might be on your consumer-grade internet. And as a result of this, if you're streaming and you lose your local connection at your home, the stream won't drop off. You'll be able to hold on to your viewers because you'll be streaming from your Shadow server and not from home. So what I'm going to do here real quick is I am going to connect up some video from the house here using Vmix call. I got a camera on the other side of the room, and you'll see that pop up there, and I'll give you a better look at that. And check it out. We are, let me get the right camera up here for you. We are basically streaming from my house into my video production system remotely. You can even see the audio coming in from that camera. And now what we're going to do is bring in that webcam that we have here on the desk. So I'm going to add another input now. And by the way, I'm going to do a video on Vmix so you can see exactly how it works. We're just going to do a quick once-over here. But now that I've got my camera options up here, you can see that it sees that webcam as another USB device, even though it's located here at my house. I'm going to click OK here, and most of the time it comes right in. So you can see me here now waving at the webcam. We're all good there. And I can start now maybe making a little video production. So I've got this looping background here running. So we're going to do a quick little multi-view. We'll bring in my little camera from the other side of the room here first. I'll just zoom that out a little bit and position it over here maybe. And it's crazy just how fast this is and how little latency I've got here setting all of this up, even though we are probably about 2 or 3 hours away by car from where this thing is located. So we're just going to position this window over here. We'll then go to the next stage of our multi-viewer here and bring in my webcam, and we'll zoom that one out, maybe move it over to the other side of the screen. And now you can see we've got a video looping. We have 2 video inputs coming, one of them over this virtual thing. And we're only using about 20% or so of the overall system resources here to make all this work. And now what I'm going to do is start streaming this out to my extras channel here. So we're going to hit stream, and what it's going to do now is connect up to YouTube and start streaming this out. And I've done streams using this system before. It actually works out pretty well most of the time. And we're only using about 6 megabits per second from the Shadow server up to YouTube for this to work. And check out how low the latency is here on the webcam. It's super quick. And I've just been really impressed by just how well all of this has been working. Now, again, the Vmix call system that we use to get video into the Vmix system uses about as much bandwidth as Skype. So it's actually very conceivable that you could run a production within reason from the system here. And overall, with streaming and 2 of these inputs coming in, plus the looping video, we're using about, if you look there at the bottom, about 30% of the overall resources. So we still have a little bit of headroom here to add in some additional stuff. And I've run a couple of streams now with this, and it's been super reliable even when the connection that I am on is not. So good stuff there, and another interesting use case for Shadow beyond just gaming. Now, I was also able to get DaVinci Resolve to run on it, which is a video editor. It's probably not the most practical thing to edit video in the cloud like this, but maybe you've got proxy files or something that are small and easily uploadable that you can drop into here. So there's just a lot that you can do with this when you've got a system running somewhere else. And I've been using it a lot to test things on the channel, especially some of the NAS things that we do where you want to check how something might work from a remote computer. Well, you got a remote computer, you boot up Shadow, and you can start testing files from outside your network going back and forth. And that's just a tip of the iceberg here for what you can do when you've got your own device up in the cloud. Now, you could, of course, do something with Amazon. Amazon AWS does have Windows options available, but I think from a cost perspective, this makes more sense. Now, one thing that will happen with Shadow is that if you leave it idle for any length of time, it will shut itself down. And that's because they want to keep the resources available for other users. Like most of these services, they basically sell more accounts than they have hardware for, so you can't just leave it on and have it running as your own personal server. you'll need to have something on Amazon AWS or DigitalOcean or one of those services. But if you are looking for a computer that you can pop in and use every once in a while running Windows 10, I have found Shadow to be incredibly versatile, powerful, and useful. And it's something that has become just another thing that I use here around the channel to do some of the work that I do, both for live streaming, but also for testing products that we often review here and need that external connection for. So I'm very happy with it so far, and it's definitely something worth checking out if you want a good game streaming service, or perhaps just having a remote computer that you can pop into to get some work done every now and then. I'm sure there is more to cover here, so if there's something you'd like me to try out, let me know down in the comments and we'll do some follow-up videos once I've got a few requests from all of you. That's going to do it for now. Until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Jim Peter, Tom Albrecht, Frank Lewandowski, Mark Bollinger, and Chris Allegretta. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.